What's up, YouTube? Welcome to the Coffee Pod. My name is Chishy Zed.
Drink the coffee, it'll make you feel better.
The reason why there's a lack of role models for young men. Guys, this is a very interesting perspective and topic. No more wasting time. Let's get it.
The reason that there is such a void of male role models for young men is because we literally do not have adult males in our population anymore. What do I mean by that? There's no adult males. Like, there's grown men everywhere, but they're not actually physiologically adult human males. They're not. I'm going to teach you guys some fun shit.
Let's go.
So in biology, there's this thing called neoteny. It's essentially an organism will retain juvenile traits as it ages if it doesn't get stressed out enough. Okay? If you live in an environment that's too, easy, you don't actually develop adult characteristics. I noticed this when I was in high school. I grew up in a very affluent area. And when we went to our grad night, it was at Disneyland. And we went with a bunch of inner city schools. And everyone I was with realized that all of these kids looked like adults. They looked so much older than us. And so, because they were in a more stressful environment, which caused their adrenal glands to upregulate, which caused higher testosterone levels, which made them literally adults. Made them adults in a way that we were still juvenile. Every organism has multiple phenotypes it can have, all right? Your phenotype's dictated by your genes, but what dictates which genes get expressed is your environment. The best example of this is pigs. So domesticated pigs, the pink ones that you all know and love, that's one phenotype. It's not even their healthy phenotype. You take a domesticated pig, you release it into the wild. After 6 months, you have a feral boar that has grown thick, curly hair and tusks. Why? Well, being in the stressful environment causes its adrenal glands to upregulate, increasing testosterone production, causing it to take on a different phenotype of a boar. Another example of this is with wolves and foxes. If you start to breed wolves and foxes and you select for more passive traits, their adrenal glands get smaller. As their adrenal glands get smaller, they develop floppy ears, curly hair, and spots, all things we find in domesticated dogs. Right, it's all based off the adrenal glands. Look at the population right now of adult men. What do we got? Men have never been fatter with lower testosterone. Men have never been fatter with lower testosterone. Those are both juvenile characteristics. It's because they're domesticated. Most people are domesticated. So why do men have all these juvenile characteristics? It's because people are domesticated animals now. Most human beings are domesticated animals, especially if you live in the United States. A domesticated animal is an animal fed by humans, taken care of by humans in order to get economic gain from them. What do you idiots do all day? You just consume media, consume pills, consume food. You are domesticated livestock, and then you use your free time to then generate more labor and wealth for rich people. You're domesticated animals. The reason young men have no one to look up to is because a little piglet wouldn't look up to a pig. It wants to be a boar. And all it sees around it is pigs. And it's like, I don't feel that in my heart. I feel like I'm a boar in here, but I have all these pigs in charge telling me that, don't worry, I'm definitely a piggy.
Wow. That's good coffee.
Drink the coffee, it'll make you feel better.
He said a couple of things that really got me thinking. Very, very informative and very, very enlightening. Shout out to my man. I'm going to have his link to his TikTok down there in the pinned top comment. I think I've reacted to a video he's done in the past. Really good content creator over there on TikTok. Hopefully they keep him on there and don't get rid of him for speaking truth, because I don't know. He looks like he might be a coffee drinker to me. All right, so the main topic was why men today don't have good role models to look up to. And he basically said, well, there's no adult males. He says there's a lot of grown men, but there are no adult males. And he started the video out by basically saying that an orgasm will retain juvenile characteristics if it's not stressed out enough. This makes a lot of sense to me. It makes way too much sense. Why? Because we live in such a civilized world. The way he laid everything down, especially towards the end, where he just kind of compared the average person to a domesticated animal. I mean, it was almost scary how accurate that was. What does a dog do? What do pets do? Well, they basically feed the machine. And in the instance of like humans, the machine is to either provide comfort to you, to please you, but it's taken out of its natural habitat. It doesn't have to hunt for food. It comes in a bag, right? The same way we can go to grocery stores. We don't have to go around searching for food, growing our own food. We don't have to go out as men and hunt our own food. And the question there is, how has that affected men, especially here in the West, where things are very, very much civilized? I don't think it's all good. And listen, while technology and the advancement and civilization of societies have made life easier for us, there are definitely ways, which we just explained in this video, that men have been negatively affected. He basically said that most men today are overweight and low in testosterone, which leads me to other thoughts, like just maybe this may explain why young men gravitate, and men in general, gravitate to content on YouTube, on podcasts that encourages men to just be men, to be aggressive, right? That thing that society doesn't want. This also explains, not may explains, it definitely explains the popularization of figures like Andrew Tate, for example, right? And how he just took the world by storm, and people are sitting there looking at men surprised as to why they're attracted to someone like Andrew Tate. But he basically says the same thing. Andrew Tate and many other content creators pretty much say the same thing in different ways, right? We all have our different perspectives, whether it's through the coffee pod, whether it's through listening to like Joe Rogan or whoever. The men in these spaces have pretty much come to the same conclusion, is that there are men out here who know that there's something missing. They want challenge. They want adversity. They understand that they're not as strong physically, mentally as they would like to be. And there are some deficits there. And the only way, it seems like we as men, especially out here in the US, can simulate the type of environment that would produce an adult male, a male who would be a good role model for a young man to look up to, a sort of hero to young men and older men, but especially the younger guys coming up. The only way to simulate that is to go to the gym and physically put yourself through pain and suffering. You can tell a man who hasn't experienced enough suffering in his life. It's in his eyes. I think women can tell also, and they're attracted to men who don't show as many juvenile tendencies. And of course, the older the woman gets, the more that she looks for those adult characteristics. But you can tell, man, you can look in a man's eyes, you can have a conversation, just the way a man carries himself, his facial structure, and you can almost tell, and I mean like to a physical level, not some magic shit. You can literally look at a man and say, this man has been through some shit in his life, and he's stronger because of it, not defeated, not sad, not depressed, but you can tell that he's carrying some weight. And it's an interesting thing because it's almost like like a man is supposed to have that weight on him. It's painful, but there's like a satisfying feeling that comes with it. Hey, you don't know how to really figure out if you've gone through that process? Go look at photos of you when you were younger, high school. Go look at your high school photos. Look at the way you smile in photographs. I remember my best friend said something to me. He's a big guy, man. He was big in high school, right? I made friends with him because we used to have like a boxing match in the dorm. I went to boarding school for about 4 years, right? I was in boarding school. I got sent off. It was like a co-ed type situation. But they would have a room where the guys would box, and no one wanted to box him, but I wanted to make a name for myself. I was a freshman, so I said, hey man, I'll box this dude, right? Ended up being my best friend till this day. I remember him saying something to me after we graduated high school. And I think at that age, he was like approaching his like mid-20s. And he was talking about how when he was younger, he used to brag about just basically how big he looked, but he was younger, until he met this one chick who he was talking to, and he asked her to guess his age. She looked at him and said, 17, 18. And he was about 17 or 18. So she guessed his age right. And he was shocked because in most cases, most people would think he's older. And he looked at her and says, yeah, actually I am. I'm 17 years old, or around then. I don't remember the exact age. It was one of those two. And he asked her and he said, what made you think I was that young? You know, because I'm a big guy and people never guess that young. She looked at him and said, you know, you're a little bit too happy. She said, it's the way that you smile. And listen, I never forgot that. When he shared that to me, he never forgot that. And it's so true, man. There's something that happens to a man who's gotten to the point where he's been through enough hardship that he no longer acts like a child. I just thought of a Bible verse out of nowhere. Guys, I was raised up in the church. All the time I have these verses that go through my mind. Since a kid, I was raised up in the church. But this one is, I think it's in like Corinthians. 1 Corinthians 13:12. It says, when I was a child, I spake as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. Every man needs to get to the point where they put away childish things. But I think we're in a time right now where it's more difficult to do that. If you want to be a 40-year-old playing video games every day, you can do that. Yes, you could probably do that, maintain your job, and really live an easy life. But again, what did my man say in the video? He said, an organism will retain juvenile traits as it ages if it doesn't get stressed out enough. To me, that means men need stress. You need difficulty in your life. You need to put yourself through hard times. Sometimes those are mental times. And I think there's too many things, whether it's like drugs or, that there's too many ways we medicate ourselves to keep ourselves from going through that pain. Ever since I stopped drinking, that has forced me to go through certain pain. I wasn't like, I didn't have trouble with alcohol, but you guys know how it is. You have a long day, you go have a beer. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but there is a different experience when there's no beer to drink and you just have your bed and the thoughts that are running through your mind. It's a different type of self-control, man. And some people think that, man, I would go crazy, but you'd be surprised what your mind is capable of going through and how strong you actually are. Some guys smoke, right? They think if I'm not able to smoke my weed after the end of the day, again, I'm not here to tell you what to do, but I definitely think there's something to be said about putting yourself through struggle, putting yourself through stress, not self-medicating in a way that just turns you into a different type of individual. But overall, the number one way every one of us, any man, can improve their mental state and their toughness is to hit the gym, right? To hit those weights. That's the number one way. With me, man, with work, it's a constant battle. It's not easy. I'm not one of those guys who's like, oh, I love the gym and I hit it every day. No. I struggle with keeping up with that. It's an on and off thing of my diet, push, run. I purposely force myself. I put myself in situations where I will have no other choice but to work out some way, somehow. And you got to trick yourself sometimes into doing that. Guys, as always, we're going to check out a few of these comments to see what the people have to say. First comment here from a woman says, also, if you look at our grandparents' yearbooks, those kids look way, way older than we did in high school. I always wondered why, but it makes sense now. The yearbook thing that she just said right there, it's the same thing I was talking about. Look at your high school pics. I assure you they had a much more difficult time in high school in their day and age. They were starting families earlier. They had more responsibility. It wasn't this party, have fun type lifestyle. I mean, of course they partied, right? But it's definitely a lot different now. Next comment from a gentleman says, you nailed it. Another person here said, that's so interesting. Actually never knew that. Next comment explains why people of the same age can look so vastly different. Someone else responded back to that comment and said, crazy. That's literally exactly what he was explaining. Another commenter, this is spot on. Another person says, this explains so much. Also interesting, the indigenous people having rites of passage that were stressful. Good point. Another commenter says, great information. I'm going to have to think on that for a bit, but you're highly accurate. Another gentleman says, that was very interesting, followed by this next comment. This is so true and wild. Another woman says, this was a lot to take in. I see it now, though. Guys, what do you think? Comment down below. Listen, I appreciate you for checking out yet another episode of the Coffee Pot. Till next time, I'm out. Peace.